welcome back to Tall Boy Radio. This episode, we're going to be talking about conspiracy theories. This is something that was born out of an episode that we did a couple of weeks ago, and we got chatting at the end of it. Instead, it's something that we were all interested in and wanted to talk about. So we're going to do it almost as a bit of a two-parter with an extra special episode to be released in a week or so's time, but we'll talk about that later. So let's do our usual hellos, and let's tell us what you're drinking. Ken?
Hi guys, nice to see you all again. Seems to become a regular feature now. So tonight I am normally Russian standard, but tonight with a cream soda twist.
Interesting.
Very pleasant.
Andy?
Just like last week, I'm the same T-shirt, and I'm also drinking the same beer.
Fair play.
Vacation. Yeah. And, I'm drinking it coincidentally again in a San Miguel glass.
Nice work.
Nice, a cloudy beer.
You're just going for continuity. That's what it is.
That's it. Yeah.
People expect that of you now, so that's what you're gonna have to do every week now.
If you watch every episode, it'll be it's all linked. So. There's a hidden message there.
That sounds like a conspiracy theory to me.
It does. If you play it backwards.
Yeah.
Potter.
Bravo, sir, bravo.
I am drinking, whether you see that, Leffy, which is a fantastic drop. Again, in official TBR merch. And looking forward to this, really looking forward to this episode. So great you guys can be along, and let's crack on. And what are you drinking?
I'm drinking, again, Titanic beer. You know I love them. And again, it's a fruity one. It's raspberry pale. And this one is I think it's a wheat beer. And it really is crisp and refreshing. It doesn't really taste that much of beer, actually. It's
that's a question. That's why you think what I'm thinking about. You're going on about your beers. So it's like, you sent me, and he did, folks, he sent me a picture of a blueberry waffle stout. Dude, where did you get that from? Because that sounds...
Tesco's, believe it or not.
Are you kidding? Right, fantastic.
£3 a can in Tesco's. Honestly, try it.
Honestly.
It was amazing. It was called a breakfast stout, so it was flavoured with waffle and blueberry, and it was amazing. And because it's a breakfast one, it's got that oatmeal in it, and it was quite a heavy body one. So
I was going to say quite filling then.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep an eye out for that one. Amazing.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I'm going to make it when this whole COVID thing's died down a little bit more, then I'm definitely going to be looking for that. Do you know what? I reckon I can get that on a Tesco delivery. But
That's it. Have a look.
Hey, I was going to. I'm not a big stout man, but that flavour.
Next level. So just before we kick off then, conspiracy theories, I want to say a big thank you to the people of India, Chile, Finland, just the one Finland actually, the country where I most want to be, Monty Python. The Netherlands, that's the one.
There you go.
And Greece, where we've picked up listeners in all those countries recently. So thank you to those guys for joining the TBR revolution. Exactly.
Long may it continue.
Indeed. Conspiracy theories. This is something, I don't care who you are, you're a little bit interested in. Whether you believe in them or you believe in them all, there's one that you believe holds water. I can almost guarantee it. Whether it's the man on the moon, Princess Diana, JFK, 9/11, Roswell, Area 51, UFOs, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, chemtrails, Lord Lucan, Hitler lived in Argentina, rigged elections, global warming, flat Earth, Jimmy Hoffa, Jack the Ripper, secret societies control the world, or that reptile people control the world, and so on. Did I miss any?
Well, we're about to find out.
I'm sure there's loads that you've missed.
Yeah. So we're each going to talk about a conspiracy theory, or in Ken's case, I think you want to talk about the general concept of conspiracy theories, am I right in saying?
I think my take on it is I believe in so many. What would be classed, I think, from the conversation we had post one of our podcasts, is I've spent many years sort of like cultivating an interest in not believing what we're told at all times, and sometimes think and looking outside the box at different theories, and I think conspiracy there are so many out there. There are some obviously that I won't subscribe to that just are so outlandish that it makes ridiculous, but there are some which hold enough water now that actually this is actually more believable than the actual official version. And I'm sure people out there listening right now will be, if you say conspiracy theory, they'll immediately one will come to their mind.
Yeah,
and I think it'd be good for if people who are watching this or listening to this comment, put it in the comments below. What was the first conspiracy theory you think of when you hear the word conspiracy theory?
Good shout, dude. Like that. Andy, what's your take on them then? What when you hear conspiracy theories, then what's the first one that springs to mind?
So for me, they follow the same theme as the last few episodes we spoke of, was where there's so many people saying it's a truth in it, and you got JFK murder, you got the flat Earth, 9/11. I went for one that's now I think about it, I'm like, is it a conspiracy theory? I don't even think it is.
Well, go on then. Put it out there. Let's go on.
When I was thinking about it, so obviously in the WhatsApp group, I'd listened to what everyone's doing. I was like, okay, they're good ones. They're the ones I would have gone for. But I just went for the Bermuda Triangle. So I don't know if it's... Yeah, okay, good. Yes. So for me, I always think back to when I was a kid. I was about 9 or 10. And we only had like 4 TV channels back then. And they had a documentary on about the Bermuda Triangle saying, it's this area where planes crash and boats disappear and all this stuff. And it got me really interested. I was like, oh, where is this and what is it and all that. And it was like an hour-long thing, and I watched it and I was like glued to it. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then in school, you sort of touch upon it a little bit in geography and stuff. So, I've watched more modern documentaries on it. And it's I won't even say it's conspiracy theory now. I think just debunked it all, haven't they, recently? Well, not recently, but they just turned around saying, yeah, it's not real. It's just a coincidence that all these boats are disappearing and stuff.
Yeah,
so,
but you say coincidence, and is it coincidence?
Carl Jung.
Carl Jung. Yeah, absolutely.
Dropping knowledge.
Well, A-level psychologist here. Failed A-level psychologist, but that's a different matter. But yeah, you talk about. I mean, Bermuda Triangle is a great shot because growing up, you're like, really? Were there alien abductions going on there? Have they all disappeared? Have they been transported up in an alien spacecraft? All that sort of stuff. And obviously, the older you get, the more you hear stories about actually the conspiracy theories has been debunked and actually these are the reasons why. But growing up, yeah, Bermuda Triangle was definitely, there's got to be something there. There's sort of, whether was it government experiments were going on, or there was, the people have been abducted and they've been taken, and then there was all that sort of weird stuff surrounding it. So yeah, I'd absolutely say it's a conspiracy theory, 100%. Back in the day, massive one.
I remember the documentary I watched was saying like there's a high salt level, and then something else as well. I can't remember what it was. I think because it's a hot climate. I can't remember if it's salt or something, but it was basically it changed the consistency of the water, so boats would then more prone to sinking. So it's probably not salt, and then also planes going through it are in the midst of it and stuff like that. But
yeah,
when you actually think about it, it's like per square mile. I think it's the same. Boat wrecks as anywhere else in the world, so it's not really.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's not.
It
doesn't stack out at all.
Yeah, I think I read something saying that actually the Bermuda Triangle actually is quite a big triangle. Yeah. It's not like a tiny bit of. It's like quite a big triangle. So, and actually, wreckage per square foot of sea is the same as like off the Plymouth coast or off the American coast or whatever. It was like a similar sort of ratio. So I think I remember. I think it was just growing up. Obviously, people there must have been 2 or 3 or 10, however many there were, within quite a short space of time. And that obviously then it was everyone's like, oh my God, something's going on. It's like the second plane in a month that's gone down there or something. And then it sort of, do you know what I mean? It perpetuates then, doesn't it? Some people start talking about it and it sort of gathers a bit of momentum sort of thing. But
see, it's interesting as well. The most interesting thing about that is that obviously, the second that Andy brought up the Bermuda Triangle, you think about the plane crashes, you think about the boat crashes, and boat wrecks, sorry. But as Andy says, this has been largely debunked and proved to be, in all likelihood, then false. Yet, I bet 10 years from now, we'll still be talking about the Bermuda Triangle like it is an actual genuine phenomenon. So why would that be? Why is that so ingrained in our psyche, that myth?
I think is it the unknown? Is it the danger aspect? Is it? I think with most conspiracy theories, it's the unknown. There might have been a few facts or a few sort of experiences that perhaps didn't quite add up. Do you know what I mean? So somebody's recollection of something didn't quite tally up with somebody else's, and you're like, well, hold on, how can two people there have two completely different stories, and then one gains credit and one doesn't, or whatever? I don't know. I think it's and again, maybe going back to what Ken said a minute ago. There's lots of people that genuinely believe that what we are told actually isn't the truth. And, I think there's lots of people there that will say, we're seeking the truth, we want to go, and it could be Bermuda Triangle, could be 9/11, could be Princess Diana, could be a whole host of things. But Bermuda Triangle, yeah, absolutely. I always say that was a conspiracy theory sort of, when I was growing up. 100%.
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
And interestingly, I missed out from my list at the start.
I missed out from your list at the start, yeah.
Which will be a conspiracy theory because you deliberately left it off because you knew Andy was going to bring it in.
Except I didn't, because Andy never replied when I
It's a secret.
Who's the real puppet master here?
Yeah,
it's Andy, we know it. He's the brains behind the operation.
Absolutely.
I'll go quiet for the next 45 minutes drinking now.
Normal service is resumed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So who wants to go next then? You've got Gaz. I know you've got. I know what you're looking at. And Ken's is more. Do you know who wants to? Do you want to do?
Shall I go my first?
Yeah.
I mean, there were lots, to be honest. The one I've gone for is the moon landings. And I when I was doing a bit of research in a previous podcast, I mentioned that there was a series of magazines that talked about conspiracies and unexplained and stuff. And I did a bit of research, and they're actually called The X Factor, which obviously has new meanings now because of the TV show and stuff. But it's called The X Factor magazine, and it dealt with conspiracy theories, and it dealt with unexplained and all that sort of stuff. And I remember subscribing to those magazines years ago, and I remember reading about the moon landings. And obviously, I wasn't alive when the moon landings took place, but I remember reading and thinking, actually, you know what? There's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that they didn't. And actually, we didn't go to the moon, and that actually it was all faked. And you sort of, and there's been lots of programs on, like Andy said, that sort of debunked the conspiracy theory. But I still don't know. I'm still a little bit, and I'm sure lots of people out there will go, yeah, whatever, But I'm still a little bit not sure. Just some of the things that I've read. And some of the things that I've heard in terms of trying to debunk them, what they're trying to say to debunk them is a bit like, really? That doesn't hold too much water, sort of thing. So, the couple of things for me. Why haven't we gone back? So that's the first thing. Why are we looking at trying to travel to Mars when actually the moon is just there? So that for one is for me. And I remember in this magazine that they got a photographer, a professional photographer, and he analysed all of the photos from the moon, and he was 100%. He said, and he's quite, I can't remember the guy's name, and he was quite well renowned in the world of photography. And he went, absolutely, those photos are not on that can't be. And one of the things they were talking about was there's no stars that you can see. So when you see any photos of the moon landings, you can't see any stars. And the debunked theory is that, well, that's because they're not being focused on. So when you take a photograph, you focus on a particular thing. And that's supposed to be like looking at Andy now on the webcam, you know, everything else behind him is blurred out and he's the main focus.
Yeah.
So you're talking about...
And he's the star.
And he is a star of the show. Yeah, nice little segue there. So, and what they're saying is you wouldn't hear that. So
you have to, folks. You have to see that. That does not translate in audio, but you have to see that.
And what they were saying was basically the stars were not the focus of the photograph, and therefore you wouldn't see them. And this photographer, this guy was like, "What a crock of crap!" He said, "Even if they're not the focus in the photograph, you would still see them." And there were lots of other sort of conspiracy theories about that. There appeared to be two different light sources. Shadows of different lengths of various, either the lunar module or the individual human beings or whatever it may be. So they were talking about the shadow of the spacecraft, yet the flag was on the dark side of the spacecraft, yet was perfectly lit. So, like, if you imagine looking at the lunar module, like the left-hand side was completely dark because obviously there's only one light source on the moon. And the left-hand side of the module was completely dark, yet on the left-hand side of the module, you could clearly see the American flag being lit. And it's like, well, where did that light source come from? You would not see that. And there were stories about the flag, and it appears though it's rippling, and it wouldn't because there's no lunar wind, and it's a vacuum and all that sort of stuff. And again, the debunked story is that actually when they were putting it into the ground, they actually were sort of wiggling it, trying to get it into the ground, and that made the ruffle effect of and it made it look like the flag and was flapping. That's the debunk.
I've seen. Did you, Ken? You're a big fan of MythBusters, but they actually did an episode on this.
Go on.
And it's Grant Imahara, Carrie Byron, and Tori Vellecci. They went, and this is what they investigated, and they stuck a flag in a vacuum and gave it that wiggle effect. And guess what? It did. It rippled.
Really?
It did ripple. Yeah.
Okay.
That was interesting.
So that might be, you know, so MythBusters and all that. There was a random floating object in one of the photos of the visor. So basically, the famous photograph is of a visor, and actually you can see a floating object in. And they were saying that was a stage prop that was just in the background that shouldn't have been seen, and all sorts of stuff.
Can I just interject on this?
Of course,
because as you pointed out, with the photographs on the moon and stuff like that, there's actually photographs on the moon which involve a static blue light up above the moon surface.
Yeah.
Which I think is which if the moon landings are real, then also that's unexplained.
Yeah.
Because there should be nothing out there other than us on the moon. But if it was staged,
we're led to believe there's nothing out there. That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
I have an interesting anecdote about that, but I'll bring that to background in a bit. But yeah, as I say, just there's a photo, and I'm sure you've seen it, guys, where it's just like there's a blue light above the moon, above the moon's surface.
Yeah, and lots of so they're talking about some of the photographs, and there was a famous one of a moon rock, and it basically looked like it got the letter C written on it, and they were saying that actually that was a stage prop from, you know, there was a famous footprint photograph, and the conspiracy theory is that obviously wasn't on the moon. And the debunked theory for that was that the reason the photograph, the footprint was there was because the fact that there's no lunar wind is the fact that actually once you put your foot down, it would stay there and you'll see the footprint. The conspiracy theorists argue that actually in order for footprint to happen, you need moisture, and there's no moisture on the moon's surface. So therefore, once you put your foot down, it would dissipate into effectively dust, because actually you need moisture to create a footprint.
Yeah.
So to create a footprint in mud, in soil, in grass, whatever, you need some moisture. And the fact there's no moisture on the moon, that footprint would just dissipate.
So what they're saying is the compression, because obviously the boost of the human being with the compression would then, as soon as you raise your foot, there's nothing to keep it compressed.
There's nothing to keep it compressed.
So it just goes. Yeah.
So it just goes. So it just goes to dust, because
you know what? Adam's there like, well,
there's no moisture.
No, I've not heard that.
So in order to make a footprint, so basically, you would need atmosphere or moisture or whatever to actually hold those things in place.
Yep.
And as soon as you took your foot away,
Yeah.
the draft that you create or whatever would actually dissipate. It's imagine walking over dust. You open a door. Imagine walking out. It would dissipate. There's no moisture.
Yeah,
That's
an excellent scientific way to look at that. It's a brilliant one. I love that.
Now the debunked story is that actually, because of the fact there's no, and this is what I was on about sometimes the debunked story, you're a bit like, yeah, but hold on, what about that? Because they've said there's no lunar wind to actually blow the footprint away, so therefore, it would remain there. But what they fail to recognise is how the footprint's there in the first place. So there's lots of things of that. The other interesting thing was for me, and I haven't really thought about it other than sort of in the last week when I was doing a bit of research, is who photographed Neil Armstrong getting out of the module?
That's one that's always bothered me.
So if he's the first man on the moon, who photographs and videos him getting out?
Didn't they say that was from a window on the side of the module?
Excuse my French, what a crock of crap that is. Because, and again, they got a scientist, and they actually got a mountaineer as well to look at the footage. And this famous mountaineer was saying, when you're going into various terrain that you don't know of, you would always harness yourself at 3 harness points. And I didn't know this, but you harness yourself in a certain way that if you fell that way, you'd be safe. If you fell that way, you'd be safe. Depending on, and actually what they were saying is that the way that he came out of the module and he was going down the steps, he was only tethered in one position apparently, and I hadn't seen the photo in enough detail to say whether he had or whether he hadn't, but I was reading this article and he was trying to get to the bottom of this photograph, and he said he was only harnessed in one way, and actually the way that he actually came down the steps was, and this was the mountaineer that was talking, he said the way that he came down the steps was very odd, in as much as it was almost like he knew where he was and he knew how the ground was going to react, he knew how he was going to react and all of that. And he said if you were going onto a foreign area, a foreign object, you literally would be holding on and you wouldn't just bounce down onto the surface. You'd be like,
like social media, when they say they're on a motorbike and they're filming themselves driving away, what they actually do is they go and put the camera down, then they go back and then they drive past it. And maybe he's done that. Maybe he's gone out, slammed the camera down and on a pole or something like that, and then jump back in and gone, oh, it's first step for man, because it's going to be live on TV or something like that.
I mean, whether that was the case, whether and Buzz
bulletproof.
Buzz Aldrin did. He did an interview with Professor Brian Cox. Actually, Buzz Aldrin was talking quite a lot about Neil Armstrong.
He's quite emotive about it, isn't he? He takes it very personally.
Yeah,
Buzz Aldrin says Buzz Aldrin knows stuff.
Yeah,
he knows stuff.
And he was saying that Neil Armstrong was a very keen photographer, and that's why he got all these fantastic shots and all of that. And he was very, he was very sort of passionate about what he was saying.
He's got a reputation to uphold as well, though, because if he didn't go, if it's all fake, he didn't go, and he's made a very, very nice career of not being there.
It's funny because there's obviously the Stanley Kubrick angle, which is that it's filmed in a Hollywood studio, and actually the moon landings were a couple of years after Space Odyssey, was it? The first Kubrick film. So the technology was there to create a film set that looks like space, because Kubrick did it in his films.
And what were Kubrick's last words?
And allegedly it's Kubrick. Allegedly it's Kubrick. I mean, I know some people are like, that's actually not Stanley Kubrick, but lots of people say
love that. Great stuff.
It is. Interestingly, again, doing a bit of research, they actually said that Kubrick, in his film The Shining, stated lots of things in The Shining to support the fact that the moon landings were fake. In as much as the carpet in the Overlook Hotel was very much, the pattern was very much like one of the lunar modules. Various other, in the original story, the room was 211 or whatever, but in the film it's 237, and actually the moon is 237,000 kilometers away from the Earth, and all this sorts of stuff. So there's lots of stuff bouncing around, and I didn't realize the link with The Shining. And then there was something to do with the words that he wrote on the paper. I was a little bit not so sure about that, but there were lots of things that clues that he gave and stuff. The biggest one, obviously, on his deathbed, saying, "I faked the moon landings," basically.
One of the Bond films as well. You probably know which one it is. I'm not a big Bond fan.
Moonraker.
Is it? No, I don't think it was Moonraker. But I think it was it the one with I think it was Sean Connery, and it was the one that was set in Vegas. But at one point they're chasing the bad guy, and they run through a film set where they are faking the moon landing.
Right.
And it is one thing that never really gets mentioned. But if you watch the film, they do just run through the fake moon landing.
Well, obviously the Stanley Kubrick Space Odyssey a couple of years before, and literally it was like there was the moon, and there was space, and he created this set, and they filmed it, so they had. I mean, I was talking to my wife about this, and she was like, but it would take so many thousands of people to be in the conspiracy. And I said, well, it wouldn't, because all the people that worked at Mission Control, all the people that worked at Cape Canaveral, all the people that worked in Houston or whatever, they genuinely thought that people were going to the moon.
Mm.
And it would have only have been a handful of people, so the 3 astronauts and however many other people that you would necessarily need to keep the conspiracy to.
Mm.
Because the rocket was probably fired or whatever, but all the people that were there, all the scientists, all the engineers, they probably genuinely thought they were going to the moon. And I don't know. And look, it might have been the case. And I'm not saying I necessarily believe we haven't been to the moon. I just think there's quite a lot of evidence to say we didn't.
I'm just going to chuck another in there as well, actually, because Big Tilly, the Tilly and China show, he's one that doesn't believe that we went to the moon. And one of his questions was, you talking about there's no wind on the moon, but you just had this huge vehicle bang straight down into all this dust. Where's the dust clouds?
Yeah.
Where's the dust clouds and all that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting one. So you're talking July the 20th, 1969, when first man set foot on the moon. Obviously, we've not been back since the 70s, as I understand it. But the technology in 69 was less significant than your mobile phone.
Yeah.
You know, is it? Well, no, that's
is
cool.
it feasible?
Message from me on there, yeah. But yeah, is it feasible? Is it possible with that technology to place a rocket on the moon? I don't know.
Don't know.
Don't know.
And neither, in fairness, do NASA anymore. They've claimed the technology has been lost, destroyed. They've never. The films from the from the moon landing have apparently been unarchived, destroyed, lost.
Well, it was interesting, yeah, and one of the things that again that you do your reading is that actually nobody can actually corroborate the moon landings, because actually the only available source of information was NASA, and NASA owned it.
Yeah.
And there's actually no third party corroboration. There's no Russian guy on a space station going, oh look, they're there, sort of thing. You know, no, and obviously. Yeah. Cold War era and stuff, and the space race was a massive thing. Yeah. The Americans got wind that the Russians effectively were going to launch. They wanted to get it in first. It was a bit of a rush job. We probably can't get there. Let's fake it. And I don't know it, but for me, as a conspiracy theorist, to a certain extent, the moon landings for me were the first big one where I remember reading about it, thinking, oh, okay, maybe we have been sold a bit blind. So for me, that was my first big, and there's a couple of others, the JFK stuff, but not quite to that extent. The Roswell, the Area 51 stuff. But for me, it was the moon landings, and that was like, whoa. Because when I was reading the literature, I was like, actually, that makes sense. The moon rock, the footprint, the photos, that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you have to nail it, sorry, go on, Ken.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, so I can now nicely slide my anecdote in, which is my granddad was involved in building Jodrell Bank, the radio telescope, the massive radio telescope here in England. So my mum was there at Jodrell Bank for the moon landings.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. And there was obviously, because they've got 2 radio channels, they had one that was obviously for everybody, and then there was one that was just, to Earth. And obviously there's a I believe there's an 8-minute break in communications where it's just like, well, they're on the moon now, we'll get it back. But with regards to that, there's evidence to suggest that my mum claims it's true, that they were overheard saying to Houston, by the way, there's vehicles on the side of the crater here.
Wow.
We're not alone. And that was on a secure channel which obviously was not disseminated out to the main public because
That's
that
not what they
gap
wanted to hear, was it?
That's no, you don't want it. And of course, everything from that time period would have been delayed. So
Yeah.
NASA would have had the opportunity to sit there and say, you know what, not now. There you go. And back in you come. So that's she's always said from when I was a very young kid that she was there, she heard it, and it was just she's always been a believer in the fact that obviously not maybe we did go, but we were certainly not alone up there. I've heard stories that the moon, when you land on it, rings like a bell.
Yeah.
Implying it's hollow on the inside.
Yeah.
Any scientist will tell you, any scientist with a salt will tell you that the moon is actually too big to be a satellite of the Earth.
Okay.
Far too big. It's just too big and should not be a satellite of Earth. You only see one side of it, obviously. You've obviously got the whole situation with the dark side of the moon, which I believe in a previous podcast I mentioned about remote viewing.
Yeah.
That people have said they've remote viewed onto the far side of the moon, and there's cities there. There's pictures and videos now of lights on the far side of the moon where there should be nothing.
Yeah.
The whole thing is the moon is a very interesting experience, but that's ringing like a bell and the hollowness and this. If it's genuine, if it's a genuine satellite that we've just grabbed onto and is controlling our tides, then why is there so much, as Gaz pointed out, why have we never been back? How have NASA lost the technology, but we can put a rover on Mars? And Mars, the evidence on Mars is that is a civilization that literally just got his atmosphere evaporated.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going to end up eventually.
And for me, and did we go to the moon? Possibly. Did we go to the moon? We were not alone, but possibly.
Yeah.
I can't get away from the fact that we had the technology in 1970, whenever it was the last time we went, and the last time we landed on the moon.
Yeah.
With today's technology, why have we not gone to the moon?
It's cost, isn't it? I think. Although the technology's better,
we're sending stuff to Mars, and we're sending satellites and telescopes and everything else out to Neptune and Saturn and all these other far-reaching places, and you've got Hubble, which is phenomenal, by the way.
Honestly, Hubble is just a different level, unreal.
But why? If I suppose it begs the question: why are we going to Mars? Are we going to Mars, or are we going to another planet because we fear as though our natural resources on this planet at some point are going to come to an end, and therefore we need to leave as a civilization this planet and go somewhere else? Is it the thirst for what is out there? I don't know. If it's a thirst for what is out there, surely you would check what's next door instead of then checking what's down the road. So you would go to the moon first and check out what's there before then going elsewhere. That to me would just be a logical step.
It would be. I think there's a lot of video evidence. There's a lot of photography of it. People are now paying attention to the moon more because of the acceleration in technology, camera technology. You can attach a SLR camera to your telescope, and you can just watch the moon go by for hours, and you will see things. Go on, guys. Sorry.
No, just interesting, nice little link into one of the last things I was going to mention about sort of the moon was that they got a photography expert saying, and actually they were saying the type of camera and the type of film that they were using on the moon wouldn't actually survive being on the moon, just because the type of film that they were using, they recreated it in a vacuum, and it basically just disintegrated. It physically couldn't handle being in a vacuum.
As you pointed out earlier on, no moisture.
So
there's nothing to hold it all together.
Yeah. So physically, it would, and they were talking about shutters and aperture and all that and stuff that obviously as a non-photographer I didn't sort of get, but they basically this photographer was saying the type of camera that they used and the type of film that they used 100% would not survive the atmosphere on the moon. And now I can't sit here and say I can either agree or disagree with that because I'm not an expert, but he is an expert, and he said that would not be the case.
Yeah.
Do we want to nail our colours to the mast then?
Yeah, I think we should.
I'm going to assume then, Ken, based on what your mum said, that although the information that has been portrayed may not be accurate of what they saw there, you accept that we did go there.
My feeling on it is yes, but we've been told not to come back.
Okay.
Which, if it is a satellite, this is a genuine satellite, just a ball of dust. A, why were there things sat on the craters? Why is there now film and photography, even from missions that went to the moon, of things coming across the surface of the moon where they shouldn't be, casting shadows on the moon, which implies that they are up in the air. And of course, there's the old factor. It's just like, if we've been there once, we can do it again. Are you trying to tell me that Elon Musk cannot provide a launcher to put us on the moon? Yeah. I don't believe that. I think we have been, and I think we've been cordially asked. You've been here once, please don't come again. Hence why China have recently sent them to the dark side of the moon, and I think that's been in contravention of whatever treaty has been signed. And that is an interest. That's a very different kind of podcast. That's a much more interesting, darker podcast that I think would be if enough people want it. I'm happy to go into it.
We're getting them stacked up for later, aren't we?
I think we've been, but I think we've been asked not to come back.
Gaz, what's your feelings? And you brought it up. Do you believe we have or we haven't?
I think I'm sort of along Ken's thinking, in as much as I think we probably have been, but I also think there is a reason why we haven't been back.
Yes.
Or we haven't been back to the extent that as a civilization we should have been back. Because obviously there have been, other than Aldrin and Armstrong and so on, we have had other people land on the moon, but not since 1970, whatever. So I suspect that we probably have, but I suspect there's probably a reason why we haven't been back. Whether that's because we've been told, or whether or not that's because we've seen something, and whether or not we've had the conversation with a civilization and we've said, okay, we've come once, we won't come back, we're really sorry, we'll leave you alone. Or the civilization went, you've been once, don't come back, you will leave us alone. Or it's a case of, shit, we've seen something, we're not going back. So
Andy may be onto something with the financial cost of it. Because to send something to the moon and to actually have it inhabit the moon for 4, 5, 6, 7 days, that's billions of dollars. Billions. But there's enough in the black market budget. There's enough in the Black Ops budget. To do that.
Let's have our own Dark Lord have his say then, Andy. What are your opinions on?
Come on, the Sith.
I'd like to think we have been to the moon, and whether the videos and pictures are fake, I don't know. I don't know if I care or not, to be honest. But I think we probably have been there. Wasn't there a story about a president that was like, when he's running for it, he's like, oh, I'm going to release everything we've got about UFOs or whatever. And then when he got in power, he's like, yeah, I'm not saying anything now.
I think it might have been Bill Clinton.
Was it Clinton? Or was it?
Well, there is it in America? Is it?
That's a great point.
Is it what's the Freedom of Information Act? Is it something like 50 years or 60 years or whatever it may be? And actually, basically, after that time, any documentation purporting to be related to a particular topic, any human being can go in and ask to, is it requisite it from a library or whatever it may be, and it has to be available to them, I think.
It doesn't have to be. It's a presidential release, and actually Trump was questioned recently about the existence of aliens, and some people believe his answers implied that he was never going to, he would release that information, but there was nothing to release, but was implying, actually, I know damn well that they do exist.
Right, okay.
So, moving this on, well, actually, I'll give you my opinion, on the moon landing. Again, I believe it happened. I don't understand why we've not been back to the degree that we have. Maybe, like Andy says, finances. When you think about what it cost to do it then, what would it cost to do it now.
But why go to Mars?
It's something new.
It's something new. Yeah,
I believe the Mars thing is that we've not sent a human there yet, but Elon Musk is planning to in 2026.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe it's because men are from Venus and women are from Mars.
Which leads us on to...
Go on.
It's probably not that. Right, before we get on to Ken's bit now, I'm going to chuck this one out quickly. Just watching the time, we'll whiz through this one a little bit. So, Roswell, New Mexico, or more importantly, what happened just outside of Roswell, New Mexico.
There was a deep sigh from someone there.
Just Sith Lord over there.
I think it was, you know.
I didn't make a noise.
So the 14th of June, 1947. Obviously, it didn't really make the papers until early July because the farmer who discovered the wreck just shoved it in his barn and thought that'll do. It's just something that isn't often talked about.
Okay.
Obviously, like I say, it was reported, and a chap by the name of Walter Haut, and I apologise if I'm pronouncing that name incorrectly, he reported it, made the papers on the 8th of July, 1947. And I always sort of assumed that this one went down to, well, maybe he had described it as an unidentified flying object, a UFO, a crashed UFO. But actually, he described it as a crashed saucer.
Ah, okay.
So I thought it might have been, a language barrier that as to why it got confused. And obviously, a few days later, it was later debunked and claimed to be a weather balloon.
Yeah,
obviously,
weather balloon.
Is the story.
That was the debunk that I'd heard. It's just a weather balloon. That's
it. Amongst the rubble or the detritus was tinfoil, rubber strips, sticks, most commonly used in alien spacecraft, and some electrical equipment, which is really what caused the confusion. Now, this debris was then flown to Fort Worth in Texas and was confirmed there as a weather balloon. In the 70s and 80s, several people who were allegedly linked with the Roswell incident were interviewed and claimed it was a saucer and that bodies were recovered. But this is where, obviously, in the 1980s, conspiracy theories, that's when it really took off.
Yeah.
People were talking about government control of the media, and that's where interest, interest between now and then, and so the 80s and the 40s, with this incident, there wasn't an awful lot of interest in the Roswell incident, which I find mind-blowing. So documents then released, claiming to show that Harry S. Truman covered it up with a project known as the Majestic 12 or MJ12 project, and these were later debunked and proved to be fake or allegedly. But the most interesting thing for me, and this is one thing that when I was reading into this, I hadn't heard. So tell me if you've heard of this one, because I'm guessing all that other stuff is out there. It's familiar. 1994, documents were released revealing it was a nuclear surveillance balloon designed to spy on Russian nuclear testing, and that they were basically testing it out in New Mexico, and it came down and it crashed and was discovered by a farmer. Now, that's something that I had never heard, but given the nature of the beast, and obviously you've got the Nevada testing of the American nuclear capability roughly at the same time, to me, that one sort of makes sense as to what that unexplained electronic equipment was. And this was part of Project Mogul, which came about when this information was released, as Gaz said, about that Freedom of Information Act.
But wasn't there some, not controversy, that's the wrong word, wasn't there some consternation as to the nature of the technology that was recovered? Wasn't it? I vaguely remember reading something to do with, yes, while they tried to say, was it a weather balloon, and that actually it was US technology. I'm sure I remember reading somewhere saying that actually there were various people that said actually it wasn't US technology. And I don't for life remember where they said that technology had come from, whether it was Russian, China, alien, whatever. But I'm sure there was some, some sort of rumblings as to actually the technology wasn't American.
Yeah, what it was, allegedly, was radar surveillance technology, which was guiding the balloon. So I imagine in 1947, how many people would know what radar surveillance technology looked like if we're going to be skeptical?
Yeah.
But that's not where the story ends, because in 1995, we had Anton Deck.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're going to go on to Anton Deck.
I am, yeah. The alien autopsy video was 17 minutes, apparently is out there on YouTube, and that pertains to be individuals found in the Roswell crash. And again, this is subsequently claimed to have been faked. It's up to you whether you choose to believe it or not. But the last bit I want to share about this, which sort of then throws a little bit more of doubt over those statements, which tend to lean towards it being a genuine piece of equipment, is that Walter Haupt, the chap who had seen it, handled it, and was with it when it was moved from New Mexico to Texas, he, after he passed, he'd always sworn, and he died in New Mexico, although he wasn't from there. I think he was from Ohio. He passed away in 2005, and there was a sealed affidavit from him, which was to be opened upon his death, and he swears that what he saw was a flying saucer, and he saw bodies. Something that and an affidavit obviously is a legal opinion, an opinionated document, which is then shared. And he said the bodies were about 4 foot in height. These large heads that everybody talks about.
But weren't they great? But it's interesting because obviously the alien creatures known as the Greys, that's there with the slightly elongated head, with the sort of the black sort of oblong sort of oval eyes. I'm sure that in I say modern history culture, they were portrayed before Roswell.
Possibly in science fiction.
So therefore, if it was the Greys at Roswell, have they just conveniently made it out to be the Greys because that was what popular opinion said that aliens look like? I don't know.
Well, a lot of the information that comes about the bodies recovering is also in New Mexico. Some years later, there was a plane crash. There was a couple of parachutists who come, one of which was very, very severely injured. And a lot of civilians witnessed this crash coming down, and this individual, who, like I said, was very, very badly injured on his landing. And people are assuming actually that when these chaps gave their opinions and they put forth what they'd seen, what they alleged to have seen, actually they were confusing it because enough time had passed, 20 years had passed, 25, 30 years had passed. Actually, they were talking about this and confusing it because the mind can amalgamate memories.
Look, for me, Roswell and Area 51 are a little bit synonymous in as much as Roswell crash, recovered, taken to Area 51. And the Area 51 conspiracists obviously there's been lots of sightings of objects, of lights in the mountain range that actually there's no installation that should be there and it's hidden and all, so the conspiracy theories out there are that there is something in Area 51. And obviously in America now, genuinely to this day, if you go to Area 51, there are signs that say, basically, you set foot across that fence and we're going to shoot your head off.
We'll shoot you dead, yeah.
Sort of thing. So there's obviously something there. Whether it's an American government testing site, is it nuclear sites, I don't know. It just seems that, again, there's too much evidence to suggest that there's nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ken, Andy, what are your thoughts, Roswell and Area 51? And
I'd love to know what Andy's thoughts are on this. Love to. I mean, I really would, because I could do an entire podcast just me talking, so about this sort of stuff. And I think, there's Andy, what's your take on it?
So, in regards to Roswell and all that, I'd like to think it happened. But on the flip side, it's sort of at that time period where a lot of sci-fi comics and stuff are coming out, and they just fuel the imagination or whatever. And also, do you then try and like get the space race sort of thing of like let's build a plane that's like, or helicopter or whatever, it's like a saucer, just to put some fear in the Russians or whoever, or Cuba or whatever. And you sort of got that aspect then of where they're just they're just trying new designs and stuff like that for planes. And I don't know, there's multiple ways you can go down and think about it. I think now they do show it on Google Maps, don't they, Area 51?
Yeah.
So you can actually see it and stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I actually the UK have a sort of Area 51, and I was based there for about a year, and I only found out afterwards that people call it that. And it was just like a normal base. It was just a communications hub for the UK, well, not the UK, but the world, of where all military comms go through.
Andy, this is really interesting, mate. Go on. This is awesome.
This is probably another story, but they've got tunnels there as well. There's an underground train that goes to London and stuff like that, and it's supposed to be like if London got bombed, then the Parliament get the train to this place and stuff like that. And
are you allowed to say where it is?
Probably not.
I don't know, actually. You can Google it. It's on Google.
There you go. Yeah.
He signed a gagging order. He signed a gagging order.
Hey, that's it. That's it. Yeah. He knows more than he's telling us.
The Sith Lord.
Wow. So go on. You said this in communications hub where there's a train track from London to the base. What else is there?
It's just an underground base with whatever comms equipment was in the offices above. They'd replicate it underground as well. So if something did happen, they could just set it all up underneath.
So actually a bit like I don't know, like a sort of nuclear bunker almost. So they've replicated, so you could continue to function just underground effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the military, that's just a precaution you take in. It's redundancy, should we say? And then people take that however they will. And for Area 51, I think it's different. I think that's more of a research and development place, and that's why it was all secret, because I reckon they do test stuff, and whether they got bodies and all that, I don't know. We're probably never likely to know unless another 10 years. So I did think 2020 would be the year that we'd find out about aliens the way it's gone. So.
There's still time.
I was going to say, with everything else that's been going on in the world this year, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. Oh, by the way,
come back next year.
So do you think then aliens potentially are just a convenient distraction? Let people believe in aliens, let people believe in a crash flying saucer, and actually distract from the technology that we're building here. And actually, that may very well have been what they crashed.
I do think future technology is the wrong phrase, because I don't necessarily believe it's come from the future and we're looking. It's not like an Independence Day type. It's come from the future and we've got it and we're in. I do think that there are areas in the world, and look, I'm not naive enough to think that it's just the American and British government. The Koreans will be doing it, the Indians will be doing it, the Chinese will be doing it, whoever will be doing it. I do think that they will be testing various weaponry. I mean, not in Area 51 because it's baking hot, but I know that there are military facilities where they are testing ice rifles, effectively, where bullets can be made of ice, and effectively, if you run out of bullets, you can
cryogenics.
You could basically just shove up a bit of ice in this hopper or whatever it is, and it basically molds it into a bullet, and you can fire it, and it will kill you. You
get ones where you can stand round corners and shoot people from round corners.
Which
we used apparently in Iraq, the first Gulf War.
Okay, I didn't know that, but yeah, I'm not naive enough to think that technology is not trying to be developed. And when from a government point of view, it'll be like, well, everybody else is doing it, so we need to keep up with them. And there'll always be finger pointing as to who was the first, but it doesn't really matter. I think the technology every government has. Does Area 51 hold alien spacecraft? I don't know. Do I think we've been visited by aliens? Yes, at some point. Ask me to point towards the evidence. I don't. I can't. is it a feeling that I've got? Yeah, I do think, for me, statistically, when you look at the Earth being one planet in a solar system of 8 planets, whatever there are, in a galaxy of however many stars and planets in a universe, statistically, there's life on one. Really?
If the universe is infinite, then you follow that on progressively. Surely, then there has to be an infinite number of planets that can hold life.
There are two possibilities. We're either completely alone out here, or we're not, and they're both terrifying.
Yeah, but which is strange. I'm going to say this because a lot of what I've said in lots of previous podcasts, I sort of defunct the scientific side and go very much on this is what I think. Scientifically speaking, surely statistically,
yeah,
we are not on the only planet, and it's been proven in our own solar system that in previous times, millions and millions of years ago, planets had the same environment, the same atmosphere that could sustain life. So you extrapolate that out from just our solar system out into our galaxy, other galaxies, the known universe and beyond. Surely statistically we're not the only life. And then when you start thinking about, well, actually, if we're not the only life, who's to say that life in those other planets have not progressed at a faster rate than we have, and therefore they are not capable of interstellar travel, time travel, whatever it may be that we might get to in another 100 years' time? Who's to say that they haven't already done that and they are visiting us, they have visited us, and they've been visiting us for hundreds of years? So I think I'm a subscriber to that sort of train of thought. So yeah, do we have an actual aircraft in Area 51? No. Do we have alien bodies in Area 51? No. Have we been visited by extraterrestrials in whatever guise? Yes, I genuinely think we have.
What about, was it a crashed flying saucer in Roswell, or just outside of Roswell in Mexico?
I don't think it's a weather balloon.
You don't think it's a weather balloon?
I think whether it's a crashed UFO or it was I don't think it was a weather balloon.
Cool. Andy?
I don't believe the weather balloon thing, whether it was like an experimental plane or UFO.
Yeah. I would go more along that line in terms of it might have been an experimental flight. I genuinely don't think it's a weather balloon.
Cool. Ken, go on, you give us your opinion, then you can segue into what you have to say.
Roswell, there is an excellent book by Philip Corsi, Colonel Philip Corsi, retired, called The Day After Roswell. I have it downstairs by my bedside table, which I have read a couple of times now. I believe that it was a saucer UFO that was struck by lightning and crashed into the desert and was picked up by the US Army rapidly and moved to obviously secure facilities.
Does that mean that you think the US Army were tracking it then? If they were
I believe they would. They have a rapid response team. There's a case in because a case in Mexico. You can look up where the US Army literally just broke all international borders and literally just charged across and just go, no, that's ours, forget it. And Mexico was like, the US was like, you can't do shit, we're out. I believe that Roswell was the beginning of the acceleration in technology with regards to fiber optics and all that sort of thing. The massive increase in technology after that Roswell cannot be just coincidental that all of a sudden we just happen to be at that point in our evolution and we managed to make this stuff up. I don't think the story that the US government tells us is indeed correct. I believe that if you tell people the lie enough times, they'll believe it. Roswell was just the first one that that was officially debunked, because you've got a situation where Jesse Mantell was the commander at the time, and he was of the base at the time, and he had what he describes as a metallic material which was thin, but if you crushed it up in your hand and then let it go, it had effectively muscle memory and returned back to its original form. There's if it's a weather balloon, then apparently there's metal frames with symbols on them. There's evidence in the book that Philip Corsi wrote that suggests that there was at least one alive grey taken. The UFOs in general, I have absolutely no doubt we have been visited, are being visited, are in some cases being manipulated by forces we couldn't possibly comprehend, or would scare normal people to the point of, well, what's the point? To the point to things like things that can phase in, phase out of our realities and stuff like that.
So the War of the Worlds, Jeff Wayne quote. So we are being viewed like we would in a magnifying glass or whatever it was.
So do you know it's a very, very good point, guys? There's enough evidence. There's enough evidence to suggest that the human race, this might be a do-over.
It's being scrutinised and it's being watched.
Now, there's enough spiritualists, people out there who believe that there are forces outside in the universe, in our solar system, that are watching over us, making sure that the negative races who want our elimination are protected, that we're protected. I have there's enough photos and videos of the sun being siphoned, the energy being siphoned off the sun. It's no coincidence we're entering a grand solar minimum, which is a cooling of the sun, which obviously reverts our weather pattern to being cooler. That's a thing that's actually been happening for 2 or 3 years now, which is obviously why we're having more interesting weather, I think. If they turned up on the doorstep and said, "Hey, we're here," I'd be just like, told you. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. I don't think we're the masters of our own destiny. I think sometimes, like the Egyptians had access to technology they shouldn't have, and I believe we've spoken about Atlantis at one point.
Yeah.
And whether it was sunk or whether they just took off and said, "We're out." And there's enough to suggest that even with Atlantis's geographical placement, nobody can find any part of it. We're only just now finding cities underwater. The bottom of the oceans has never been mapped properly, has never been explored properly. We're finding new species of fish or living organisms beneath the waves every single year, every single day. We're finding new stuff. There's a school of thought that suggests that maybe Antarctica is a gateway to a hollow Earth, and that we're not, that there are people living on the inside. And there's a widely documented flight that apparently went through a portal in Antarctica and was told basically flew around and came back out and said that just no, there's an interest, there's a reason why the Nazis and Hitler had a massive interest in that, and why there was an operation, a high jump I believe it was, that went down to Antarctica with like a full battle fleet and got absolutely mullered by things they couldn't hit, things that were just toying with them basically and just melting stuff. There's an interesting, with regards to Area 51, there's a gentleman who no longer with us called Phil Schneider, who says that he was part of a security force who went beneath the earth and was involved in a firefight with creatures not of this earth, where his other teammates were or squad mates were either killed, but he had scars on his physical body that were not from a bullet or from another weapon. He apparently committed suicide by garroting himself by being tied to a chair. Make of that what you. I know, Adam. I know it makes no sense, but he didn't. He definitely did not do that. In the same way as a conspiracy theory, which I'll segue nicely into, is Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself.
Yeah.
But I fully believe that we are we are high. We're sentient creatures, but we have more to give, more to learn, more to offer.
Yeah.
But we have to be something has to be activated within our DNA to make us more. And I think UFOs and aliens, and whether you believe in reptilians or not, or whether you believe in Hollow Earth and different civilizations under the earth, or whether you believe that giant footprints on the side of rocks are proof of massive creatures that used to live here, I don't think we're the first people here, and I don't think we're the first people to ever see Mars either. I think Mars is a completely different kettle of fish, and I think if we actually send people there, I don't think it's going to end particularly well. I mean, NASA have recently said they're prepared to say, they're very close to us saying, yeah, we found alien life on Mars, but is the public ready for that?
Yeah.
I personally am absolutely okay with that. Say it, get it over and done with. Let's just get on with the world. Trust the people more to actually give them more credit than just being a hysterical rabble. People have brains. They're not stupid, as Gaz has pointed out. There's enough evidence. You literally open Google, type in "were the moon landings faked?" Right. Well, I may not go down that rabbit hole, but I may end down a completely different rabbit hole. Was JFK murdered? Let's go down that rabbit hole. There's so many. Was 9/11 a setup? Is that something that because the lie is so massive, it doesn't mean it's still not a lie.
Yeah,
and
I do think that. Sorry, I do think you made a great point about we're not, as a race, as a species, we're not ready yet for whatever it is that is to come.
Agreed.
And it might go back to a previous episode where we talked about, I think it's the Medium episode, where we talked about the capacity of the human mind and the rewiring and the reprogramming of the human mind. So there's a big belief that we are being scrutinized, we are being watched, we are being evaluated as a race as to, and it might sound a little bit holier than thou, as to, are we worthy of this fantastic knowledge? And actually, whoever it is that's monitoring us, if that's the right phrase, are waiting to see how we progress as a race, as a species.
Yep.
And if we get to the point where, whatever that point may be, they will garnish us with, and I'm making it up, and time travel, interstellar travel, whatever it may be. But
are you making it up? Are you absolutely? I believe you're genuinely onto the right track there. I think we're no longer we're not savages anymore, but we can't be trusted with nuclear weapons as a human race.
Yeah,
we can't be, and this is why there's enough evidence to show that when there's even remotely a sniff of a nuclear launch or a nuclear code being even looked at, that these UFOs appear, disable the whole works, and then just fly off. Because we're not ready, as you've so correctly pointed out, we're not ready for that yet. Yes, will there come a point when we are? Yes. And what if they do give us interstellar travel? What if they do appear out of nowhere in the middle of it? So say in the middle of Adam's shop and say, Adam, we're going to talk to you about X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
We just don't know when that time is going to be. But should we really dismiss that as being something? And I know we've realized we've jumped from conspiracy theories into more of a spiritualization and an evolution type podcast, but
it's interesting to use spiritualization, because that's the one thing. I've just listened to yours and Gaz's conversation there, and just about every religion that you read, more or less, it's about humans being put here by a larger deity and judged on their behavior. So
Bravo, mate. Well done. Yeah, great.
Reading between the lines then, if we are vastly different to anything else on this planet, is that a belief then that that's how we came to be here? Because I always remember Dougie Barnett taught us science. And Dougie Barnes is one of the most intelligent men I have ever met in my life. Genius. And
fruit bat.
Yeah, he was. He's a loon. But great man. And I remember talking to him about religion, assuming that he wouldn't buy into it because he was a man of science. And he said, no, we are so vastly different than anything else on this planet. It's ridiculous to believe that we developed from apes.
So, what happens? So, evolution from...
That's a whole different podcast, evolution versus science.
Tell me about it. But what if... What if... I mean, I think you know where I'm going with this. What happens if the religious deities that we look upon as being something extraordinary were actually extraterrestrial?
Yeah.
And I know it's going to have the whole meme of the ancient aliens guys, aliens. But what if nobody human can walk on water?
Yeah.
But Jesus could. Nobody could do the things that Muhammad could do, but he could. Indian religion and folklore is absolutely filled with kings and gods who could do amazing. Japan.
Yeah, I was going to say the
dragons
Chinese,
in the sky.
The Chinese-Japanese culture is filled with deities and a battle in the heavens and all of that sort of. You know, and you only have to go through Norse, Roman, sort of Greek sort of mythology to look at a battle of the gods and all of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. So, but a great example of that sort of experience is just like, if we're going to sit there and say that we are just who we are, let's look at the Egyptians then. The Egyptians put 3 pyramids out in the middle of they built them massively. But if you transpose Orion's belt over the top of those 3 pyramids, it lines up perfectly.
Perfect.
And I'm not talking like, and I'm sure Gaz will agree. And I'm not talking like all within half a mile. Perfectly.
Not even with half a meter.
Not even exactly. Not
even with half a meter.
You're no difference. Exactly.
If you were to extrapolate the spaces between the peaks of the pyramids and the bases of the pyramids, and you were to extrapolate that out into orbit, it would absolutely transpose the constellation.
Not even half a degree. I mean, bang on. Bang on. Point. But that's not the only place it happened. It's happened in South America. Yeah. South America has it. China has pyramids.
But the other issue is with the pyramids. Just come back to the Egyptian.
I know Andy's thinking now. Oh, so does Stockport.
Just the one, but it's enough.
But you're thinking, but when you looked at the bases of the pyramids and the Great Pyramids, the bases of the pyramids were so precise that each of the bases of the pyramids were so precise that actually back in the day, even the Egyptians was proved to, I say, not have the technology or the knowledge to do it. Yes, they could build it, but not to that precision.
Yeah.
So it begs the question, how? And you look at, I'll use that, a bit like, you look at the bases of the pyramids, and they are absolutely identical.
Yeah.
Not just down to the number of blocks they use, but actually the size of each of the blocks that they use. And when you read into it and you do a little bit of research, you're like, oh, holy fudge!
Absolutely. Definitely.
What? How? Back in the day, how could they do that?
Yeah, without recently, they've just found without any sort of
future. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you said that recently they've just found a unexplored void in the actual main pyramid. They've never found it, never seen it, never done anything, and it's just like it's only just been found because they've used obviously ground penetrating radar and satellites to dig into that sort of thing. But that's not the only place that this sort of thing exists where you look at it and go, actually, it's just coincidental. Well, it can't be coincidental if it's happening. I mean, a great example, if we're going to use local ones, and I say local in a broader sense, Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Stonehenge.
Yeah.
If they are literally, if they are people who have put it in such a perspective, in such a way, built it in such a way that it not only correlates with the actual, and I'm not again, they have moved those stones some distance. I believe they come from Wales, is it?
South Wales, isn't it? So hundreds and hundreds of miles.
These massive stone pillars, and it correlates perfectly with the celestial calendar.
Well, if you look at solstice, isn't it? Is it solstice that then shines upon, and not variant by 1 degree or half a degree. No. It absolutely dissects whatever the term for the headstone, I'll call it, for whatever it's. But not even by, the dispersion isn't that. The dispersion is no. There's no dispersion. It is exactly
pristine. You've got ones in South America where you've got stones which are not only which could only have been put there using laser cutting.
Yeah.
Like they are so, you couldn't get a piece of A4 paper through the actual crack.
Yeah.
You can literally, it's a case of it's like that, and you couldn't literally get anything through that. And that's not, but that just, again, how much knowledge, how much of our history, how much of our future is being suppressed by people saying, oh no, this would happen, this would happen, this would happen, and that segues back to like Roswell. We all believe it wasn't a weather balloon, and if that's the official story, then if it wasn't a weather balloon, then that surely opens up a whole bunch of possibilities of what it could have been.
Yeah.
And I think there's a situation there where sometimes it is easier to believe the lie than actually go looking and believe the truth.
I was going to say it's actually easier to believe the lie than actually question the truth, because that's the key. It's actually questioning the truth, which I suspect leads us on to, we possibly need a conspiracy theory episode 2, 3.
I think so. I think to be honest, I think the statement you just made there, guys, is a perfect place to end this one. Yeah. Into buying into truths and lies, because I think that flips back to where we started. We've covered a fair bit of ground there in between, haven't we?
If you're going to go into things, just as a side note, and this is literally a segue back to what we were getting about Roswell, which is the very beginning. If nothing else, if nobody believes anything like that, investigate Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar. Investigate Bob Lazar. Yeah. Now, if he didn't know anything, he'd have been ridiculed, made fun of, and probably eliminated by now for being. But he hasn't been. He's still and he runs a very, very nice business. Doing what he does. Now, if Bob Lazar is a liar, and they've said, "Oh, he never went here, he never did this, he never worked here," then he knows way, way more than anybody. But listen, if nothing else, look up Bob Lazar and read the book The Day After Roswell.
I think there's a documentary on Netflix about Bob Lazar. I was watching that the other day.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Stephen Greer is also an excellent watch if you get a chance. I think it's a thing called Extraterrestrial or Close Encounters, so I think is his latest one. But there's a Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer is also, he's way ahead of his time.
Wow. So as always then, if you're out there and you're listening, you feel that you have something to add to this subject, get yourself along to tallboyradio.com, find the email section, click on the social media, send in a message, however you choose to do so.
I would love to see the comments at the bottom of this YouTube video. I would love if people get to this point, please chime in. I personally would love to know what you guys think. And I'm sure the guys would as well. 100%. I know I'm a regular guest on here by now, but I think I would love to know what the listener out there and the viewer out there thinks about conspiracy theories. What do you think about Roswell? What do you think about the moon? Where do you think humanity is going? Where are we heading? And do we need an assistance? I think that'd be an amazing thing. If you have any thoughts on that, put them in the comments.
So, take all that on note, and let's say our goodbyes then. Andy?
Another fun-filled episode. Look forward to the next one. Actually, I spoke more on this one, so
Yeah, you did.
Well, did.
Do you know what? I think it's a better episode for it.
100%. Ken?
Thank you very much. Yeah, just finished my second drink, so you know what? That must be the end of the day. Thank you much indeed, guys, for having me on. Appreciate it. Look forward to the next one.
Sounded perfectly. Gazzy?
Loved it. Hour and 20 minutes. Could have gone on for longer. I think I found a bit of a kindred spirit in Ken. I think we were sort of very much on the same sort of
Are you serious? With an hour and 20?
path. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Let's look forward to the next one and echo exactly what Ken said. Get involved, all social media, tallboyradio.com. Love to see comments on YouTube as well. See you later, guys.
And until next time, when no doubt we'll have plenty more stuff to talk about. Harry Potter.